Hi everyone, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I'm your host, Dr. Haider Shah. On behalf of Kalwas, I would like to welcome all of you to this webinar. Thank you very much for joining us. Today we have another very interesting topic. I'm really honored to welcome and introduce our distinguished guest speaker who is going to talk about digital trends in education. So today we will discuss into the dynamic world of education, exploring the latest digital trends shaping the way we teach, learn, from innovative technologies to evolving teaching methodologies. So today it's a wonderful session where we will discuss all these things. So you will get the best insight, right guidance, and suggestions about all these things as we have an expert with us in today's this session. So stay tuned because an amazing stuff are coming ahead in this session. So before we start, I would like to thank Kalwas for arranging such enlightenment sessions, for their support and providing us such a wonderful platform. The aim of Kalwas is to give you the opportunity to connect and interact with world-renowned speakers, academic leaders, teachers, authors, researchers, experts, professionals, and businessmen to learn from their experiences, recommendations, and suggestions, which will enable you to learn and develop yourself in order to grow and transform individually, as well as to contribute to the world in a positive way. As our slogan is, "Come, learn, and share knowledge." So today we have an amazing person as guest. She is a well-known person in academia with wonderful experience from leading institution. She's a great human being. We always see her while contributing to the world and field, and she's always ready to share her knowledge. So let me introduce her formally. She is a senior lecturer and program coordinator at the School of Education in Manipal GlobalNxt University, Kuala Lumpur. She has 15 years of teaching experience in higher education industry and has graduated with a fast-track PhD in education from one of the leading university of Malaysia, that is University of Malaya. Her specialization encompasses various domains with education, including teaching English as second language, teacher education, curriculum development, and instructional technology. Along with that, this diverse skill set equipped her to address a wide range of educational challenges and contribute significantly to the enhancement of teaching methodologies. Moreover, she has also gained overseas teaching experience by teaching English in the Guilin University of Electronic Technology, China. Beyond her roles in academia, she is certified human resource development corporate trainer and has extensive experience in conducting trainings and workshops in the area of such as teacher professional development, communication skills, and leadership. Last but not the least, she is a wonderful speaker, author, teacher, researcher, professional, and above everything, a great human being. So please help me in welcoming our guest, Dr. Dalwinder Kaur. Welcome to the Kalwas platform, and thank you very much for joining us, Doctor.
Hello, good evening. Am I audible?
Yes, you are
Am I-
audible, please.
Okay. So, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for the wonderful introduction, Dr. Haider Shah. And I think you've introduced me beyond words. So, I'm very grateful and humbled by the introduction. And I'm very happy to be here with every one of you to share the little knowledge that I have on digital trends in education. Now, basically, what happened in the past few years is that post COVID, we have entered an era of polycrisis. I'm sure all of you know that progress in every aspect in the world has stagnated, so including education. But one thing that has grown exponentially after COVID is basically the digitalization of education. Now, the transition from face to face learning to online learning during the COVID 19 period has actually helped the growth of educational technology and has impacted a lot in the field of education. So today I'm going to share with you a little that I have on my slides here on the digital trends of education and how education is evolving and how the learning landscape of learners all around the world, be it in primary schools, secondary schools, universities, and so on, are changing. So, without further ado, I'm sharing my slide here. So, I'm Dr. Dalwinder Kaur from the School of Education of Manipal, GlobalNxt University, Malaysia. Now, a little background about me is that I am in the School of Education of an open and distance university. It's at ODL University, and we have been the pioneers of ODL learning in Asia. So we've been the landscape, education landscape for the past 20 years, and I am currently coordinating an entire online PhD and Masters in Education program. So that's why I'm working with a lot of online platforms, learning management systems, and basically coordinating the entire program online. So, with that little bit of knowledge, I hope I can impart some of them with you today. Just a moment, yeah. Okay, so the outline of my talk today, I will basically begin with the impact of digitalization and education, some digital trends in education. I will talk about the flipped instructional method, the L&D design, and some new trends to watch out for. But to begin with, I would just want you to use your mobile phones that you have and do a little check-in here. Please scan this QR, and I have just one question for you to answer. I'll just give you 2 minutes for this one, yeah? Let me see if I'm getting any responses. So the question is, what are some digital trends in education that you know, but perhaps I think you may want to scan on your QR? Well, I'm not getting any responses yet. Is there any
There
issue
might
in
be any
scanning this
problem with
correctly?
the maybe with this code. Yeah, you can
Sorry?
continue.
Sorry? Okay. So I'm just going to just basically tell you that what I did right now is an example of digitalization in education. Now, education has become so digitalized that you can, in fact, use QR codes for surveys, for exams, to do a check-in in your lectures, and so on. Now, even in fact, in whatever settings you are, be it a business setting, be it a medical setting, or whatever setting, whatever kind of field you are in, you can use a lot of digital tools that are available for free. Now, this one that I just used is basically a QR code from Mentimeter.com. So, if you are in the business setting and you just want to create a survey to share with your employees or with your staff, or if you're doing a research and you want to create a survey or a quiz or a presentation and you want to share it in a form of QR or in a form of link, you can use Mentimeter.com application for free, and you can generate a lot of interesting materials from Mentimeter.com. Now, this is one thing I normally use in my lectures, basically to get some ideas in the beginning on what is the readiness of my learners in class. So I want to determine what kind of knowledge they already have, what's the prior understanding on the topic, and I like to see what kind of expectations they have from my session and so on. You could use this in whatever webinars that you're conducting, or if you're conducting any guest lectures and so on, feel free to use it, as this is a big part of digitalization in education, using technology in education. Now, well, we have to know that in every aspect, for example, when YouTube was introduced years ago, there were people who were supportive of YouTube. There were advocates of YouTube, and there were also opposers. So in everything that you do, there will be people who has a form of phobia. Now, a lot of people have technophobia. They cannot accept the changes, the evolution that's happening in the form of in many different forms in the field of education. Now, technology is a powerful tool. We all know that, and it has changed how teachers teach and how students learn in the very few years since COVID-19. So a lot of things has changed. In fact, students or teachers who never knew about Zoom, Teams, LMS, WebEx, and so on are very familiar with these platforms these days, and they are leveraging the use of these platforms in their class. Now, what used to be chalk and board method many years ago has been replaced by terms like blended learning. hybrid learning, high flex learning, flipped learning, and so on. Now, if you're interested to know more about this, I will briefly tell you the difference between these, but I think this is an entire lecture for a different webinar. So technology has provided people access to education and access to different ways of communicating and working together. Now, it's an interesting fact to know that many governments have this initiative where they're providing tablets, they're providing mobile phones, so that students in school, in fact, even in rural areas, will have access to education. Though many people from the marginalized communities still do not have access to education, one interesting finding that I recently stumbled upon is that in the past 1 year, the number of learners in many basically countries in Asia or third world countries have increased in ODL learning. So the number of learners in ODL learning are increasing because people have gotten the access of education and they realize they can just access education through mobile phones. So technology is a very powerful tool that is changing the landscape of education. But my question for all of you here is digitalization of education better or worse for students today? Now, I'm sure all of you are students as well, or some of you may be faculty members. But what do you think of this? I may not be able to discuss this with you directly, but please ponder upon this and send in your responses so that Dr. Haider can share it with me later. Well, let's move on. Now, these are some digital trends in education. Let's start with the one that has created so much buzz in the past 1 to 2 years, artificial intelligence, which you all are familiar with. Now, when we talk about artificial intelligence has been there for years. When you get a suggestion on a YouTube video to watch, that's artificial intelligence. When you are searching for a hotel, for example, on Google, and you start getting suggestions of these hotels or places to visit in this particular area, that's basically artificial intelligence. Now, when you cross the customs in the airport, when they actually recognize your face and tell you the seat number that you will be seated on, that's artificial intelligence. Machine learning is artificial intelligence. But in the past few years, we have gone through a lot of iterations of chat GPT, starting with GPT-1, GPT-2, GPT-3, 3.5, and now we have got GPT-4 as well. Now, what we have to understand about AI. So the fact that AI is changing the landscape of education, be it for good or be it for bad, I think I'll leave it for you to ponder. But of course, I'm sure you all have seen that AI has helped researchers in many different ways. Now, let's talk about GPT. Now, I'm not sure if you know what GPT stands for. We have all heard of Chat GPT, but what does GPT really stands for? I'll just give you about a few seconds to think. Maybe you could remind yourself if you've read this somewhere on GPT. Well, GPT stands for generative. The G in GPT is generative. Well, we all know generative AI. So the G in GPT is basically generative. P is pre-trained, and the T in GPT is transformer. So it has a transformer architecture. Generative because what ability we Homo sapiens used to have, and we still do, in fact, we are able to learn and think, has this similar ability has been given to GPT as well. So these large learning models are able to learn and think. So they are pre-trained. They've got these neurons that they're working. So they have been given a lot of input where they pre-train on so much data, and they are able to impart a lot of different outputs to help people. Now, you can in fact put up an image and ask prompt GPT on what they think about the image. Now, the question is, will human role be obsolete with the digital trends in education? Now, with AI becoming a buzz, will our human role, basically, if you are a manager of a company, or you are the human resource director of a company, for example, will you become obsolete if AI starts reading the resumes, curriculum vitae, and start analyzing the profile of these candidates? Will your job become obsolete? To me, if you ask me the question, will your job become obsolete? I think no. We our jobs may become obsolete if we do not equip ourselves with the knowledge of AI or chat GPT and so on, because people who have this knowledge may replace us, but AI will not replace us. That's my personal belief. People who know AI may replace us, but AI may not be able to replace us, because I think AI, though it can be smart, it is still in the phase of hallucination, where it needs human to provide context. It needs humans to ask the right prompts. It needs humans to evaluate the reliability, evaluate whether whatever that you get from GPT is reliable or not. So human function is very much important there. So, for example, I'm asking GPT a question about, for example, marketing, the marketing gaps and that exist. So I have to provide some context to GPT. Now, when GPT provides me the answer based on the marketing gaps or problem statement that I've given to GPT, that I've prompted on GPT and so on, I also have to provide the context, whether I want this in a Malaysian context, whether I want this in a Pakistan context or Indian context or a US context and so on. For Chat GPT, the world is utopia. They see all roads as straight or everyone as same. So they do not know that we are all different people from different parts of the world, but with the same goal, same aim to improve education. So we have to provide such context to GPT, and this is a very, very important thing known as prompt engineering. So prompt engineering skill is a skill that every human should equip themselves with these days, to ask the right things, to prompt GPT in the right way. When you provide something, what is the right way to ask? What is the right context to give? So this prompt engineering skill is one that everyone, be it from primary school. Now, in Malaysia, they are talking about implementing AI in the education system from 2027. Well, 2027 is just basically 3 years more to go. But the thing is that before you implement AI in the education system, I think there are a lot of things from the grassroots should change. AI in administration, AI in analyzing data, students' data, and so on, before you could actually teach learners to use AI. But I think one very important skill that everyone should have these days is basically the prompt engineering skill. So that's about AI. Now, AI is used for research as well. A lot of people are using AI to help them with the information, but AI should not be doing the work for you. So let me talk about that shortly. Now, I'm sure you've seen the blunders made in journals and so on, where they have actually copied a paraphrase text or whatever from AI or ChatGPT and just put it like that for publication. So I think these are some blunders that could be made by humans themselves when they are not very careful, and it could, of course, diminish or affect the reputation of the journal, of the researcher, and of course the institutions as well. Now let's move on to the second one, digital library. Now, like I told you, I'm in an online university where learners do not even have to step out of their homes to get resources. Everything is available. Databases from Taylor's and Francis and all the reputable databases are available on digital libraries. So they are able to access everything online just at fingertips. So basically they've got a plethora of ebooks and journals to look at. So this is basically another trend where you are able to be seated anywhere in the world, and you can watch online webinars, and you can also access the digital library. Third, online learning. Now, online learning is basically the availability of a lot of online courses these days. Now, for example, if I want to take up a course on AI, for example, I do not have to step out of my home. I can just subscribe to a course on Udemy or Coursera and so on, and I get the certification, or digital badges are available these days. You take up courses on AI. There's so many people taking up courses on AI and obtaining digital badges as a credential of what they have, the skills that they and knowledge that they have acquired through these online courses. So online learning is available in many, many different forms. Now, for me personally, I think a lot of online learning happens on LinkedIn. I stumble upon so many interesting articles shared by my peers, my connections from different parts of the world, interesting research findings, interesting research opportunities, and so on. That happens on LinkedIn. For me, LinkedIn is like my Facebook. I have to go into LinkedIn every day to learn a lot of things from a lot of wonderful people in the world. Now, this is basically digital trends in education, where you are leveraging upon social media to learn something new, and this is at the same time promoting lifelong learning. Now, moving forward, we've got AR and VR as well. Now, if you're teaching a course in tourism, for example, you can't bring your learners out for field trips. You can't take them, you're teaching them about places in Egypt, for example. You can't take them to see the pyramids and so on. But you can use AR and VR technology to augmented reality and virtual reality to basically transport them to that real life settings where they are able to see, they're able to learn and so on. Now, similarly, in my own language classes, for example, if I want to teach students how to speak French, for example, yeah, so I can actually use AR or VR and transport them to a setting in France, for example, so that they are in that kind of native setting and they are able to immerse themselves through AR and VR technology. AR and VR technology are used in business as well, used in medical as well, when they are dissecting humans, where they are actually looking into human bodies and so on. So they are using AR and VR technology in many, many different ways, and it's expected to boom in the years to come. Now, one other digital trend that is very basically close to my heart is basically flipped instruction. I don't know how many of you here have heard of flipped instruction, where, well, I was talking about blended learning, hybrid learning, high flex learning, and flipped instruction. But let's just start with flipped instruction. Now, in a traditional classroom, a teacher teaches, all right? A teacher teaches and tells the student, well, guys, I've taught you this, go home and do your homework. So that's a traditional setting before COVID. But things have changed and are changing, that a lot of institutions, a lot of schools have started flipping their instruction. When you say flip, basically just like chapati, you flip your chapati, you're flipping your instruction. So flipped instruction basically means you learn at home through lecture notes, through PowerPoint slides and so on, that are shared prior to the class session. So perhaps 48 hours before the class session, your teacher shares these learning materials with you and you learn them at your own pace at home. So you can learn them through your mobile phones or the tablets that the school have provided you, or the governments have provided you, and so on. So when you go to the classroom for the class session, for the physical face-to-face session, you are going to be doing a lot of hands-on activities, practical activities, and also discussions and so on. Now, flipped instruction, though it's very much used in educational settings, I think it can be applied in any other settings as well, including professional development programs. In every company, I'm sure there are professional development programs for the staff, upskilling and upskilling, reskilling, and so on. So you could flip the professional development programs. You could provide content before the actual training day, provide them the content, provide them some prompts for them to think, for them to reflect, let them go through that materials at their own pace, be it a video, be it a PowerPoint slide embedded with audio or video, or just lecture notes or training notes. But when they come to the actual training, instead of spending half a day on lecture-based training that are just going to zone them out and so on, you could engage them in discussions, you could engage them in hands-on activities, games, and so on, so that they are able to solidify the understanding of certain things. So in actual fact, I'm sure you all know this, The more you do, the more you learn. The more you share, the more you learn. You have heard of this before. So students generally learn better, and they can actually consolidate the learning when they are actually involved in the learning. So that's basically active learning, where it's more of teacher facilitating the class and students taking a more active role in the class. So flipped instruction is not just something confined to schools or educational institutions, but it could be applied anywhere in any setting, right? So I'm just going to share one very interesting finding that I came across a couple of days ago, in fact. So the World Economic Forum, WEF, has done this finding, and this has been published in the Future of Jobs report in 2023. Now there are many skills on the rise, and we would definitely assume that one of the most important skills that everyone should be equipped with is AI and big data and so on. But here we are a little bit wrong, because one of the most important skill that is on the rise is the creative thinking skill. Now, if you look at all these 10 skills that I have on my slides, you will not see critical thinking skill anymore. Now, critical thinking skill was something that was harped on for many years, that we have to know what is right, what is wrong, and you basically evaluating why is this right, why is this wrong, and so on. We use critical thinking to see what's right and what's wrong. But these days, with AI, and a lot of this digitalization that is happening, what we want people to have is basically creative thinking skills, the ability to create. You have AI to help you, but AI cannot create for you. What you have to be equipping yourself with is the creative thinking skill. This creative thinking is basically able to come up with new theories, new ideas, new strategies, novel ideas, authentic ideas, and so on. Now, if you look at the school system, I don't know if you're familiar with the Bloom's taxonomy. A lot of schools are using Bloom's taxonomy for their learning objectives and so on. Very often we are basically stressing upon the verbs, knowing, remembering, applying, and so on, with the lower order thinking skills. It's very important these days, with all this digitalization of technology that's happening, and with all the tools that are readily available for us. We should move on to the higher order thinking skills, and we should actually train our young ones, to teach our young ones to create by basically implementing creative thinking in every aspect of life. So I think this is a very interesting finding. You can also read on this. It's available online. So it's basically called Future of Jobs Report 2023. Now, moving on, this is also another interesting finding that I came across. So it shows that with the advanced technology growth in education, basically there's more global expenditure in education. Yeah. So if you look at AR and VR, it's expected that more is going to be spent by 2025. Same goes for AI, same goes for robotics, and same goes for blockchain as well. So we know that in years to come, EdTech is going to grow. It's not going to, basically, there are a lot of progress that has been stagnated by the inflation and the global crisis and so on that's happening. But one thing that is definitely growing exponentially is definitely the field of education, and to narrow it down, basically the field of educational technology. Okay, now this is something I wanted to talk about when I was talking about flipped instruction. So for you to understand better, now this can be implemented in business settings as well. Yeah. So trainings can happen outside classroom. So you could provide videos, PowerPoint slides with audio and podcasts and so on. So once you meet the participants in face-to-face setting, you could have discussions, you could have hands-on activities, and you could train them to develop their own resources. Now, this is what we call as creative thinking. So a lot of creative thinking is involved here when participants and learners develop their own resources and they're able to come up with something new. So when you're able to come up with something new, you're employing a lot of creative thinking. In fact, we are using a lot of creative thinking in our day-to-day life. When you decide, for example, when I was deciding what to put on these slides, How do I want my slides to flow? How do I want my talk to flow? That's creative thinking. When you go home after work and decide what to cook for dinner today, what are the ingredients I'm going to put in this? That's creative thinking. But we are not leveraging much upon creative thinking because we have become so much dependent on technology. So the thing here is that you can use technology to aid you. Technology is, of course, a tool. Digitalization is there to aid you, to help you. But you must leverage upon this and develop creative thinking while working with technological tools. So, what are some advantages or potential challenges of implementing a flipped classroom? Now, let me just share with you. I've conducted a lot of research on flipped instruction, and one of the most potential challenge is that what happens is that we provide them with these learning materials beforehand. So, it could be 1 week earlier, could be half a week earlier, or 48 hours earlier. But some coming to the classroom prepared, they have gone through the learning materials, whereas some come with zero knowledge about the learning materials. So what do you do here? What do you do here? Some of them have learned, some of them have read, some of them have not read at all. So this has become a challenge. So what I ended up doing as a teacher, as a lecturer myself, I ended up repeating the entire lecture inside the classroom. So it was defeating the purpose of flipped classroom. So what's the point of flipping the classroom when I am going to repeat the lecture again inside classroom? So that's when I realized we have to become more creative. So for example, if you're giving them something to read, you could ask them questions. Now, before you come to class, answer these questions. Now, for example, on page or on slide number 2, it's written, this statement is written. What do you think about this? So if this question carries 2% or 3% or 5%. So give them some sort of assessment, so that they will come prepared because you're assessing them. Or if you're going to use this in your HR setting when you are doing trainings and so on, you could also be more creative and have some prompts so that they answer these prompts before they come for the physical session. So this could be one of the biggest challenge that I've come across, but there could be many other challenges that you may face if you try it out. Yeah. Okay, now I was talking about the L&D design. The L&D design these days is very, very important, and it uses a lot of these basically instructional design models. Now, in every company, there is learning and development programs and so on. So I'm just going to basically touch very little on this. Basically, L&D design is a process by which learning products and experiences are designed, developed, and delivered. So you have got a lot of new staff that you've onboarded, for example. So L&D becomes very important when you're onboarding new staff, or you've got existing staff. So you basically KPI would be 7 days training in a year or so on. So how are you going to provide this training? Do you want to call them for a full day face-to-face training and bore them? Or do you want to flip your training? So if you're going to flip your training, what kind of materials are you going to provide beforehand? Online courses, instructional manuals, or are you going to provide video tutorials for them to watch, or some learning simulations and so on? Now, this is where the Addie model comes into place. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Addie model, but it's a very linear, straightforward model. First of all, analyze the needs. I think in most L&D programs, they fail because L&D basically trainers are not able, basically it's very much top down. When it's top down, it defeats the purpose of training because you decide what you think is best for your employees. Whereas you're not analyzing the needs of your employees. What are the problems they are facing? What are their needs for training? What do they want to learn? So this is very important, analyzing the needs, analyzing the problems they are facing, so that you can design a training to address that problems, to address the needs that they have identified in the survey or in the questionnaire, basically survey questionnaire or interviews that you've conducted with your staff. Once you've designed, of course, vetting and validating it and so on, you will develop the training module. Then you can implement the training module and finally evaluate the training module. So this is basically a step-by-step process where you can actually carry out the entire training using the flipped instructional method as well. So that's the Addie model. Now, basically, digital learning, I've talked about AI, I've talked about AR, VR, I've talked about the databases, I've talked about online learning that can happen anywhere on any platform. In fact, many people are learning a lot of things from Facebook, in fact. So a lot of news is shared on Facebook, whether they are reliable or not. That's where your critical thinking comes into place. But digital learning is just everywhere you look at. You just for me it's basically LinkedIn, where a lot of digital learning is happening. I come across a lot of interesting research papers, so this brings me from one research paper to another research paper and so on. So a lot of digital learning happens. Just you may be walking around, you may be anywhere in any part of the world. Digital learning can happen and should happen. Now, we have become a very global community. So, globalization has brought us all together where we are actually creating a uniform learning culture. Now, we were just talking before this training, Dr. Haider and I. So, we come from the similar university. We didn't know each other from Malaysia. He is also a graduate, also a product from University of Malaya, and so am I. So we only found out when we got connected on LinkedIn, and we just realized that we have got mutual interests, similar research interests, and so on. And we have the same aim towards educational goals and so on. So this is basically globalization, and it creates learning communities. Even in fact, on LinkedIn, for example, there are so many learning communities, so many groups that you could join based on your own preferences, based on your own disciplines, and so on. So digital technologies can promote the formation of nationally domain-specific learning communities. In my university itself, I have students from 35 plus countries who are working adults, who are lecturers, who are basically university leaders and so on, who come from different parts of the world, but we are all together on one learning management system. So that's basically our learning community in Manipal GlobalNxt University. So we have learning communities in many different parts. I have a learning community on LinkedIn. I have a learning community in the university. I have a learning community with my alma mater, University of Malaya, and so on. So we can form learning communities anywhere and everywhere. Lifelong learning. So lifelong learning is where you continuously upskill yourself. So there are so many ways to upskill yourself with all this digitalization that's happening. So if you are a person who is basically technophobic, then of course you will be the opposer to technology and you will never be able to upskill yourself. So lifelong learning helps you to continuously develop professionally by speaking to one another. That's also lifelong learning. When you talk to someone and you share your knowledge with someone, that's also lifelong learning. For me, lifelong learning happens when I speak with other people. When people talk to me about their research, data, and so on, that's also part of lifelong learning. Data-driven decisions. Digital learning generates data about learning progress, further training. Basically, when you collect surveys and so on, you get to know a lot about certain learning progress in education system or in your own business setting and so on, whether further training is needed and what kind of learning experiences can be optimized and so on. Flexible and personalized learning. Now, I was just talking about blended learning. Now, what is blended learning? Now, blended learning is basically a heavy blending of physical and online learning. So you could have 50% physical learning, 50% online learning, which a lot of universities these days are adopting. So basically, you come to university for 3 days, you can just stay at home for 2 days and follow on the lecture online. So that's blended learning. So we also have hybrid learning. Hybrid learning is where, now, say I am teaching in University of Malaya, but you are in China or Japan or wherever, but you can still follow up with my classes through hybrid learning because I am teaching synchronously, and you can actually be in Japan and go through the lecture through Microsoft Teams, Zoom, and so on. So that's basically hybrid learning. And now we've got high flex learning. But there are 3 modes students can choose. When you can choose whether you want to join synchronously, you can choose whether you want to join asynchronously online, or synchronously online, asynchronously online, and the other one is face to face. So there are three different methods of learning you could choose, and you are flexible to personalize your learning based on this one. So this is something that we are moving towards, flexible and personalized learning. So employees learn where and where when they want, with learning content individually tailored to them. So what I'm trying to say here is that we have to do away, or slowly do away, with all these 7-day trainings, 5-day trainings, that at the end of the day they may learn something, but sometimes these content is not individually tailored to them. So rather, we have to try to adopt a system where we analyze their needs, analyze their problems, and provide them the content that is personalized to their needs and to whatever wants they have in that training, for example. And finally, talent development and employee retention is very important. And the use of digital learning offerings to identify and promote talent leads to better employee retention. Because you're using digital learning, you are continuously developing talent in a company, and that helps you to have employee retention for in the long term. Now, some current or future edtech trends to look for are, of course, artificial intelligence, which is expected to boom and which is expected to bring a lot of positive changes in the world and so on. And of course, teacher tubers. There are a lot of teachers who are using YouTube to teach live. There are a lot of teachers who are using videos or uploading them on hosting platforms like Vimeo, Screen Record, Rocket, and so on. So these are teacher tubers. Teacher tubers are becoming more prominent these days, which is a good thing because learners from any part of the world can watch these teacher tubers and learn so much from them. In fact, I have learned so much, especially on quantitative data analysis. I used to be so bad at quantitative data analysis, but I think because of these teacher tubers that we have on YouTube, I've learned regression, multiple regression, ANOVA, MANOVA, and so much from these teacher tubers. And that's basically digitalization in education. Immersive learning. You could be anywhere in the world, but you can immerse yourself in real life settings through immersive learning. Now, this is basically showing that we are very close to one another. We have a very uniform goal through immersive learning. And of course, multidisciplinary learning. Now, see, I never thought, that different disciplines could work together. So I recently attended a conference in India where I was invited to be a guest speaker for a conference in the School of Tourism and Hospitality. Now, coming from the School of Education, I've never looked at the interconnectivity or the multidisciplinary learning at all, but I just realized that education could play in fact, plays a very big role in every discipline, in every field. For example, in tourism, we talk about tourism education. So that's where the use of technology in tourism, AI in tourism education, that's where educators, people from School of Education and School of Tourism could work together. And perhaps people from the School of Education and School of Business could work together. Now, I have also doctors who are doing I have doctors who are doing Masters in Education program because they want to join the academia. So, I'm working with some people from medical field, some people from many, many different fields, in fact, the banking field, the IT field, and so on. So this is basically multidisciplinary learning. So this is just showing that we have a similar goal. We have a similar goal. We want to promote lifelong learning. We want to promote research. We want to promote a lot of exchange between experts and so on. So this is done through a lot of multidisciplinary learning. So to end, the ending note is that pedagogy in an ODL University. I just recently joined an ODL University last year in September 2023. And I realized it's very much different from traditional settings. So in ODL universities, we have a lot of live webinars which are done synchronously, and of course, a lot of asynchronous learning through discussion boards, through emails, and so on. So we are a global community, like I told you, 35 different countries, adult learners from working professionals, and so on. So we have come together on one LMS, one platform, with a similar goal. And digital library, and of course, a very structured online content that's provided online. So, with this digitalization of education, anyone from any part of the world can obtain education to improve themselves, be it short-term courses, micro credentials, or in fact, master's programs, PhD programs, and so on. Now, that's all from me. If you have any questions, Dr. Haider.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Dalwinder. Really interesting to see the way you just started it. I like the way you just started it from your outline, the impact of digitalization on education, and then the trends, the flipped class methodology, that how it is different, and even you just discussed that what are the challenges you even faced during the flipped classes, and how can we deal with that. Along with that, the future trends, all those things. I like the way you connected the different dots among the artificial intelligence, the AR, and all those things. And I love the way you just included the the top soft skills which are required for the upcoming jobs, particularly for employment, which is very interesting one. And as a
Yeah, which is
researcher,
very interesting to me as well. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah, thank you. Since you are from University of Malaya, you know very well that we are trained to produce the reference as well, and you had given a reference for that one as well. That the top 10 skills which you have acquired from the World Economic Forum. And I think these are the things which are very important for our audience from around the globe to understand how can they prepare themselves for the upcoming employment even, and what is the role of creative thinking. You explain it very well. I really appreciate the way you just explain it, and how can we connect it to the data analytics and artificial intelligence, and how can we take help out of these tools, because these tools are there to facilitate you, and you as a human needs to be creative, and you need to integrate, and you need to come up with the novel ideas and theories and all those things which are very important. I love the way you just give very wonderful examples, and I really appreciate. And I was just wondering that when you will be delivering a lecture for 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hour, how great it would be, and how great content you would explain. Because the way you are explaining, I was just looking at the time that I wish we could have 2 to 3 hours so that you could speak and you could just educate us more about it. So thank you very much for such a wonderful content and wonderful explanation. We have received so many questions, but luckily you have addressed so many questions which are very much related to the future trends, to the employment, the role of AI, the role of Chat GPT, which is very great. Some of the question needs your explanation. So should we start with the first question, please?
Of
Yeah,
course.
thank you. Yeah. So the first question they want to ask that can you just tell us what do you suggest to educators adapting their teaching strategies to incorporate digital tools effectively? Since you are the expert, you know very well which technology will be more better for digital education, and what do you recommend to them? I think this is the question from the faculty member. Yes, please.
Now, what do you suggest to educators adapting their teaching strategies to incorporate digital tools effectively? Now, I think one very important thing to remember is that there are so many technology tools. Choose the right tool. Now, when you talk about adapting the teaching strategy, choose the right tool for your classroom. Do not be overwhelmed with too many tools. Now, sometimes we use tools for the sake of using tools. We want to use tools, we have to use tools. But are we using the tools to fulfill the course learning outcomes? That's another question. So teaching strategies basically become a facilitator. Use the tools to help you. Now, for example, you must remember that you've got three different types of learners in class: visual learners, auditory learners, kinesthetic learners. You cannot be using all the same tools. So when I say adapting your teaching strategy, basically try to become more creative, because you have three different types of learners, so you can't be using the same tool all the time. For example, if you're using videos, that will basically be more suited for visual learners and auditory learners. But what about the kinesthetic learners, the learners that would like to be hands-on and move around? So you can use a different tool for them, or perhaps not in fact using tools for kinesthetic learners because they like to move around. So use games with them. So Kahoot, quizzes. These are some things where you can get learners to move around, or while answering these questions and so on. So these are some different strategies you could adopt in your own class.
Yeah, very nice, wonderful answer to this question. Thank you. And second question is, I think, from the faculty member again, because they found the right person to ask the questions. The question is, how can educators assess the effectiveness of digital tools and technologies in enhancing student learning outcomes? Yes, please.
Now, if you have got exams, I think that's the best way to assess the effectiveness. But like, if you're doing this in university level, you could use surveys, and I think that's one of the best forms. But if it's in primary schools and so on, I guess your test score results or formative assessment. Now, if you're using, when you say effectiveness of digital tools in enhancing student learning outcomes, so course learning outcomes are normally assessed. I mean, you can only figure out by giving assessments or projects and so on. So if you are able to see good results upon implementing these digital tools and so on, I guess that's one of the ways you could use assessments. And if you are teaching in secondary schools where students are much familiar with surveys, and university level, then you can give out surveys to see if they are learning better and they prefer learning with the digital tools as well.
Wow, very nice, wonderful. I'm enjoying the way you are giving answers since we have less time. So I'm just quickly going to the another question, which is very interesting. And and you see it is question number 9 because I skipped the other question which we have already addressed. The question is, what strategies can be employed to promote digital literacy and responsible use of technology among the students and educators? Yes, please.
I think this all goes back to the ethical. So the
True.
ethical use of technology. We all know with the chat GPT, a lot of people are prone to plagiarize their work and so on. So how can you promote digital literacy and responsible use of technology is basically having at the same time as you're teaching, you have to impart knowledge on the ethics. So ethics plays a very important role, and we normally do not have policies on ethics in many different countries. Now we have got ChatGPT and so on, but we are lacking. We are very much lacking on the policies on ethics and so on. But I think if it can be incorporated in the schooling system and so on, so that could be one way. Now, besides that, responsible use of technology among students and educators, I honestly can't think anything besides ethic. But if I can think, I'll get back to you later.
Yeah, sure. And I would appreciate the way you just described the ethical perspective. I think that is the most important thing, that we have the chat GPT and other tools to help us, but most importantly in ethical manner, because all these tools are to facilitate us, not to replicate our work. And I think that is the most important thing, that which you have answered, that we must talk about the ethics in the class, and maybe in the way so that the students have the notion that we have to use all the things within the boundary of ethics. And I think that would be the real contribution. So one last question, which is very interesting question as well. They want to ask that what security measures should schools and universities implement to safeguard students' data and privacy in the digital learning environment? Since there is a lot of security breaches, and there is a lot of data analytics and things which are being misused. So, what do you recommend to this question, please?
I am so sorry, Dr. Haider, but this question is beyond my scope because I am more to the pedagogical methods and so on. But if you ask me what security measures should schools and universities implement to safeguard, I honestly have no answer for this one. And
Yeah,
the
yeah.
privacy and for the privacy and so on. Yeah.
Yeah, I believe that this question goes to the security, cyber security, because I think they would be in more better position to tell us that how can they just protect those things, because most of the time what happens is that
Or
we are not
IT.
technology savvy. Yeah, so IT people will be the more appropriate person to just look at to that aspect, because this is more technical aspect. So
Yeah.
once
Yes.
again, yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Dalwinder, for your wonderful content and powerful presentation. I really like the way you just described each and everything. It was so great. And now, at the end of the session, we ask our each guest regarding their message to the world. So, what is your message to the world as a speaker, author, teacher, researcher, trainer, learner, professional, and educator?
My message is simple: never stop learning. Learning basically is lifelong. And always remember, although there's so much buzz on AI and so on, just remember that you are the pilot and AI is your co pilot. That's all.
Wow, what a powerful message you have given to the world. Since the world is going towards the AI, the chat GPT, and all those things, so you just mentioned it is the co pilot, but you are the real pilot who is actually leading that plane, and you must take care of yourself, and then everything will fall in place. So, wonderful message. And to the audience, that please do follow our distinguished guest speaker through her research work, and you can email her for future learning and guidance. She is very generous and always ready to help the people. So at the end, I would say she explained very well, and her content was powerful. So you can contact her for future learning and understanding of the topic in more detail. So that's all we have time for today. And thank you once again, Dr. Dilwinder, for your precious time.
Thank you
And
so much. Thank
it
you.
was it was a pleasure to have you with us. And I would like to thank our audience who joined us. If you have any additional questions about the information shared today, please email to us or connect to the speaker directly. She is very much available on the social media, particularly LinkedIn. We will be providing her profile link through the description of this video, so you can communicate with her. Thank you all for your support and liking our session. Stay tuned as many sessions are on the way. Please do not miss any session. At the next session, take care of yourself.